Hey folks, this is JR with DIY Prepper. Welcome to the channel. A couple months ago, I did a video showing how to refill 1 pound propane bottles, and when I did it, I used the kit from Flame King. I went with it over Mr. Heater's fuel keg because it had been out a little longer and it seemed to have slightly better reviews. And I wanted to avoid the inevitable kegger jokes from some folks. You know, like, we're not hosting an intergalactic kegger down here. Men in Black. But after I did that video, I started to wonder if I had made the right choice. There were some usability issues I had while I was filling the Flame King bottles, and then some things happened afterward that made me question if it actually is a better system than the fuel keg. So today, we're going to do a side-by-side comparison of those two systems, give some pros and cons of each, and at the end, I'll tell you which one I'll be using more going forward. And none of this is sponsored by either company. I bought all of this mess with my own money, and I don't have any ties to Flame King or Mr. Heater, who makes the fuel keg. But I just want to start off by saying that both of these are better systems than trying to refill disposable bottles. The Flame King and Fuel Keg bottles are both a lot more heavy duty than the disposables, meaning that they'll hold up to repeated refillings over time. They're specifically designed to be reused without ripping a stitch and then spewing stuff out the back. Then, even though some of y'all may not care about this, they're also legal to transport. And of course, the chances of a cop noticing that you have refilled disposable bottles is really low. I don't even know how they would be able to tell, but if a bottle ends up blowing up and hurting somebody, you could be in big trouble. Because if somebody has to go to the hospital because they wound up with a few extra holes, there's probably going to be an investigation about that, and if during the course of that investigation they find out that you refilled that bottle 15 times and ended up turning it into a Coleman Claymore, then that could be a problem. But even aside from all that, both of these systems are also a lot easier to use than trying to refill disposables. To refill the disposable bottles, you have to do things like chill them ahead of time and weigh them before and after to make sure you haven't overfilled them, which could, cause a kaboom. The Flame King and Fuel Keg bottles both use an overfill indicator or bleeder valve to A, let you know when your bottles are filled up, and B, prevent them from being overfilled. And because of this, they're actually similar in a lot of ways. Both of them come with some form of stand, a refill nozzle, and refillable bottles. And the processes for the two are almost identical with the exception of a couple caused by design differences. So for the most part, if you can do one, then you can do the other two. They're also relatively safe to use as long as you follow a few basic rules. First, use them outside. Small amounts of propane are going to escape when you're using either one, and you want that to be able to dissipate. Also, be sure to check for leaks before attempting to fill your bottles, and never, under any circumstances, use these systems anywhere near open flames or anything that could cause a spark. It should be obvious, but numerous people every year are sent to the hospital after doing something idiotic near pressurized flammable gases. So don't smoke, operate a flamethrower, or shoot an Uzi while you're refilling propane bottles. Also, be sure to wear some gloves and some eye protection because any gas that escapes from like a refill nozzle or tank is going to be very cold and it'll cause freeze burns on your skin. Also, go ahead and wear long sleeves whenever I do this just to protect my arms as well because I'm a wuss. But even though these systems are similar, they do have some pretty big differences. The most obvious one being their stands. The Flame King here comes with a nice elevated stand that you can place directly on the ground. It'll give you enough clearance to attach your refillable bottle without having to set it on the side of like a table or tailgate. The Fuel Keg, on the other hand, comes with 3 little plastic feet that attach to the top of your propane tank using thumb screws. And no, I don't mean the medieval torture device. This is a family channel and we don't do that kind of mess here. But since the plastic feet from the Fuel Keg system barely get the tank off the ground, you're gonna need to set it on something. The best thing would be like a wood picnic table or workbench, but since I don't have one of those, I just use my truck's tailgate. I don't recommend using a plastic table because of the risk of static electricity. We all know that static builds up on plastic, and if there's a spark, then some truly impressive but not very fun things may happen, and I don't want y'all turning into involuntary astronauts, so don't do that. But if you're like me and use your tailgate, also be sure that the vehicle isn't turned on. Sparks could come out of the exhaust and cause an explosion also, which would be bad too. So if you don't have a table or tailgate you can use to elevate your 20-pound tank, then the Flame King stand is a lot better. But on the other hand, the fuel keg stand is a little more stable since it's wider and actually bolts onto the tank. It's also a little better if bending over is a problem for you. Some of us, I know, we got knees that aren't what they used to be, and being able to work a little higher up is nice. It actually made filming the footage for this video a lot easier than the other one I did since I wasn't squatting the entire time. And as a general rule, if I can avoid squatting, then it's a win. I can also see the more compact fuel keg system being a little bit better if you need to use this while traveling. Maybe you have like a large cylinder in the back of your truck, but you prefer to have your heater hooked up to smaller bottles in your tent. Then that system is going to take up a lot less room. And I know a lot of y'all just run like a propane hose to a tank outside of your tent, and of course, that's fine too. Now, the refill adapters for both systems are very similar. Each one attaches to a 20-pound cylinder with a large plastic nut, and if you look close, they also have some form of stem that rests inside of the relief valve on the top of the bottle. Just connect the adapter to your propane tank, line up the stem and relief valve, and connect the bottle to the adapter. From there, turn the valve on the large propane cylinder to allow gas to flow into the refill adapter and open the bleeder valve or overfill indicator and press the lever on the nozzle. It'll take around 1.5 to 2 minutes for the bottle to fill up all the way. For both systems, you know that the bottle's full when a steady stream of propane is coming out of the overfill indicator or bleeder valve. After that happens, release the lever, close the bleeder valve, and then close the valve on the 20-pound cylinder. One thing that I've noticed about the Flame King nozzle, though, is that it likes to leak right here at the spot where it connects to the small bottle. If you turn it a little bit, it may stop, but this is an issue. And on the instruction video for the Flame King, the guy turns the bottle as he's tightening that screw, and I think that may be the problem. The fuel keg instructions, on the other hand, state specifically to only turn the screw, not the bottle. I think turning the bottle may mess with that seal a little bit because remember, there's a stem inside of the nozzle that fits inside of the bottle, and because of that, anytime that you turn the bottle, you're also turning the part of the nozzle that's connected to it while the rest of the nozzle stays put. So maybe don't do that part, just tighten the screw onto the top of the bottle enough to prevent any leaks. But probably the most important difference between the Flame King and fuel keg systems is the bottles themselves. While both of them are heavy duty, the bleeder valve on the Flame Kings and the overfill indicators on the fuel kegs are very different. The Flame King bottles use a set screw at the top of the bottle to open and close its bleeder valve. The set screw relies on an included Allen wrench that you'll need to either keep with your tank at all times or store it somewhere that you can get to it whenever you need it. The fuel keg, on the other hand, uses an attached key ring to operate its overfill indicator, and between the two, I definitely prefer the design of the fuel keg. The Flame King's Allen wrench is a 2mm or 5/64, and if you lose it and don't have another one in your toolkit, you're not going to be able to use the bottles. The keyring on the fuel keg bottle is also a lot easier to use as you're refilling bottles. You don't have to mess with getting the Allen wrench where it needs to be with one hand as you're operating the nozzle with the other. Then the fuel keg's overfill indicator is also a little safer while in storage. If you turn the keyring while it's disconnected, it's not going to leak, but that isn't the case with the bleeder valve on the Flame King bottles. They'll start to vent anytime that you turn the set screw, regardless of if it's connected to a refill adapter or not. I'm also a little suspicious that one of my Flame King bottles may have been leaking. I had them stored in my garage, and I started to notice a propane smell. But after I set them outside, the smell went away after a couple days. Then when I took the little cap off of one of the bottles, I was able to smell propane if I got close enough. Now, I haven't had the fuel keg system for as long, so it may start to have similar problems over time, but I do think that the design of the fuel keg bottles makes them a little less likely to have those kind of issues. But keeping an eye out for leaks is always important, regardless of if you're using refillable systems like these, or if you're storing disposable ones straight from the store. then picking up some better top caps may help prevent issues as well. So between the two, I'm starting to lean towards the fuel keg as being my go-to system. I just think it's a little easier to use and it has a slightly safer design. I'm not going to throw away my Flame King bottles, but I'll probably just use the fuel kegs more. And to be fair, the fuel keg system did come out nearly a decade after the Flame King, and that's the advantage of going second. You get to see what the first guy did and do it a little better. Now, if you want to see the video that I did over the Flame King a couple of months ago, then click here. Or if you want to see the preps that would disappear fast in a crisis, then click here. Thank y'all for stopping by. Y'all have a good one.